Right. Good morning, everybody. This is Mike Salona and my chicken Babs here. Wanted to give you an update on some church things. First, we wanted to let you know that we're going to be keeping our church building closed through the upcoming summer. This is going to allow us to put together a small task force whose job it's going to be to develop a reopening plan. This reopening plan will bring information together from the government, UUA, as well as from other sources, and we hope to be able to share this with you sometime this summer so that we can look forward to reconvening in some fashion this fall. Our online services and programs will continue. I want to take this opportunity to thank the staff as well as our lay leaders for stepping up and putting some great stuff together, and I look forward to seeing you hopefully soon in person. Thank you.
Our Community Knows No Boundaries by Nancy Reed McKee. Our community knows no boundaries. We are not confined by the physical limit of walls, or for that matter, of what binds us, restricts us, holds us back. We are freer than we know when we release ourselves and each other from expectations of what is needed for true community. We are here, together in space. I see you, I hear you, I love you, and I light this chalice, a beacon of this community, holding us all together, here, now. Please join me in our unison affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve human need, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God.
Hi, I'm Greg Dubow, and I'm a Unitarian Universalist minister and Air Force chaplain stationed at Ramstein Air Base, Germany. When Victoria asked me to join all of you today to honor the sacrifice of those who have gone before, I was more than happy to accept. Memorial Day isn't about barbecues and sales at big box stores, but about honor and legacy. We live in perilous times, and yet that has been the case throughout the whole of history. Thank you for taking this moment to remember. Our reading today is The Young Dead Soldiers Do Not Speak by Archibald MacLeish. The young dead soldiers do not speak. Nevertheless, they are heard in the still houses. Who has not heard them? They have a silence that speaks for them at night and when the clock counts. They say, "We were young. We have died. Remember us." They say, "We have done what we could, but until it is finished, it is not done." They say, "We have given our lives, but until it is finished, no one can know what our lives gave." They say, "Our deaths are not ours. They are yours. They will mean what you make them." They say, "Whether our lives and our deaths were for peace and a new hope, or for nothing, we cannot say. It is you who must say this." They say, "We leave you our deaths. Give them their meaning. Give them an end to the war and a true peace. Give them a victory that ends the war and a peace afterwards. Give them their meaning." We were young, they say. We have died. Remember us.
I saw an exchange between two guys on social media recently that really made me stop and think, and I haven't been able to get it out of my mind. So the first guy was one of these anti-mask people, and he was ranting about how those of us who are wearing masks are just sheep, and we're falling prey to the fear-mongering and the hysteria of the liberal media. And the second guy responded, "My grandparents ate wallpaper paste during the siege of Leningrad." And if you don't know what the siege of Leningrad was, it was 2.5 years. 2.5 years during which the Nazis tried to starve the population of Russia. And so the man's point being, this is not a sacrifice. And so as Memorial Day was approaching, it made me think about not just the soldiers, of course, who we must remember and think about during Memorial Day, but also this year, I was really thinking about the civilians. You know, the people who didn't get any training or preparation for dealing with war at home, for dealing with privation and fear, and sometimes actual fighting in the skies over them or in the village next to them or their own village, and who didn't have commanders to tell them what to do. So I've been thinking about those stories, and it's been giving me a perspective on the sacrifices and the inconveniences and the suffering of this time that we are living through. Do you remember Mrs. Miniver, the movie, the 1942 movie starring Greer Garson and Walter Pidgeon? It's a really great film. It's about a couple, a family really, in wartime London. And it begins with the Minivers. You see them, a very comfortable couple, privileged. She's shopping for a hat. and Mr. Miniver is buying a new car, and they go to bed that night all cozy and very happy with their lives. And then they go to church the next Sunday, and their priest announces from the pulpit, "We are at war." So you see how this is going to change their lives. And subsequently, their son goes into the Air Force. And then one morning, Mr. Miniver is awakened by a bunch of his boating friends, and they all take off to what turns out to be the mission to Dunkirk. And it's very Hollywood, because he comes home 5 days or 6 days later, and he's just tired, but he doesn't say anything about the horror that he has witnessed. And while he's in Dunkirk, Mrs. Miniver finds a downed Nazi pilot in her garden, passed out, who subsequently turns a gun on her and forces her to let him into the house and to give him food. And Mrs. Miniver calls the police, and she gets the gun away from the guy, and she ends up smacking the Nazi across the face. So you begin to see how really, really terrible circumstances bring out the grit in people. The war continues on, and it gets scarier and scarier, and you see Mrs. Miniver and Mr. Miniver in their bombed out house. And initially they're really stoic, and they're very, like, they make light of it. But there's this really devastating scene where they are in their family bunker as the bombs are coming out of the sky. Of course, this is the London Blitz, and they've got their 2 little baby kids with them, and you finally see in their eyes just the raw terror and fear for their lives. And the children are crying, and there's just stuff exploding all around them. And when they get through the night intact, the little boy says, "Well, they almost killed us that time, didn't they, Mommy?" And of course it reminds you of what this does to children. It's a great movie, and it ends, I won't give it away, you might see it, there's a death. And the last scene, there's a lot of death, obviously, but the last scene, the villagers are all in their church, the same church that they were in when they heard news of war. And their priest gets up, and he gives a really stirring sermon about being strong and being brave, and why that they must continue to endure. And then they all sing "Onward, Christian Soldiers," which generally is not my favorite hymn. But in this movie, as a conclusion, it's really wonderful. And again, gives you that reminder. It's just one of the very many stories that reminds us of what we all have within us. And if we don't have it within us, maybe somebody that we know has it within them and can loan it to us. Do you know what I mean? Give us some of that strength to carry on. My sister and I, she's someone who gives me a lot of strength right now. She's one of my heroes. She's a teacher, an elementary school art teacher. And we were talking about the fact that we grew up reading lots and lots of stories of children in peril. It was one of our favorite genres for some reason. And these books made a huge influence on us, and they really shaped our character, I think, because we got a broad historical perspective, and we saw how much a kid can deal with and come out with their character intact, and that they can come of age under terrifying circumstances. Of course, I'm thinking of the Diary of Anne Frank, and a book called Child of the Holocaust by Jacob Kopperblum. His name as an author is Jack Kupper, who survived the Holocaust by hiding in the woods and hiding on farms and trying to pass as a Gentile. Esther Hautzig's book, The Endless Steppe, which was about a Jewish family, and she was a teenager and they were exiled to Siberia. These were, my brother loved books also. His favorites were about soldiers in the Revolutionary War. Johnny Tremaine and My Brother Sam is Dead. I devoured biographies of people like Florence Nightingale, and of course our own Clara Barton, Universalist forebear, founder of the Red Cross, a nurse in the Crimean War. Little Women, the March Sisters, so focused on survival and service in their town while their chaplain papa was off serving in the Civil War. As adults, we remained voracious readers, but then we turned to material written by non-European authors and reporting a non-European, non-white experience of survival and endurance and those values. And we loved Beloved by Toni Morrison and Barracoon by Zora Neale Hurston. We read Diaries of Those Imprisoned, chronicles of political dictatorships, the poetry of Nicaraguan Gioconda Belli, who survived as a dissident in the Somoza regime. We read lots of books of brutal colonialization and those who endured that. So this has been really part of the fabric of our consciousness for many, many years. You may know the story of Waitstill and Martha Sharp, Unitarians from Wellesley who, at tremendous risk to their own lives, saved refugees from the Nazis. And I am close to the daughter of one of the women, Jane Babcock, who worked with the Sharps, forging documents. And her daughter, well, I knew Jane at the end of her life. Her daughter, Joanne, told me about her mother putting on her pearls and her heels and her lipstick, of course, and just going to do what must be done, what one did. And just what one does. Jane would never think this was something worthy to be commended. So I hope that you too are weaving a fabric of stories around your lives and your children's lives that demonstrate that sacrifice and some degree of privation and times of peril and difficulty are just part of what we live through in all times in history, and that we're going to get through this too. It's a helpful medical metaphor to say that we're at war with the coronavirus, and we are all fighting that war in our own way. Of course, there are those who are on the front lines, those in the medical profession and essential workers, but we are all being called into battle in one way or another. And there is a vast community of the dead and the grieving already all over the world, the fallen. But to me, the real war isn't with a virus. A virus is not an enemy combatant because it is not personal. It does not seek power or victory. It does not seek to change society according to its cruel ideologies. To me, the real war that we are fighting now is ideological, and it is very personal, and it does absolutely seek power, and it seeks to destroy and discount lives. And that is the war that we continue to fight against systemic injustice and racism. Racism is the reason that there is a disproportionate number of Black Americans and people of color who have died from the coronavirus. So the ideology of racism that prevails right now in our nation is our enemy. And you and I need to stay well so that we can continue to fight that enemy, and especially now, on behalf of those who could too easily be lumped into the broad category of those who died. What is intentional is to have our nation's leaders at the federal and state level imposing a de facto death sentence upon all those who are incarcerated and in detention centers in this country. And of course, remember that the incarceration rate in the United States is leaps and bounds beyond any other nation on this globe. And that death sentence is also being imposed by ICE, who refuses to recognize the human rights of those in their custody. So I want to put a name to that this week, this de facto death sentence for those who are incarcerated in conditions that, of course, make the virus very, very dangerous. Of course, prisoners can't observe social distancing. There is very little available to them to maintain hygiene and so forth. And this week, I'd like for us to remember Anthony Swain, a man who is incarcerated in Florida and has been for 4 years awaiting trial. So his constitutional right to speedy trial has been violated, of course. Anthony Swain is paraplegic and came into prison with, of course, many pre-existing conditions that make him especially vulnerable to the coronavirus. And he has therefore advocated for himself and asked to be released, or asked for soap and such necessities. He has been denied 4 times. Anthony's crime apparently was that he was dealing oxycodone. He has now contracted COVID-19, and just today a judge has again refused to release him. He has never gone to trial. Remember that. So I want us to stay strong and well and stay in the battle, not just for ourselves and those we love personally and know personally and our children, but for those larger battles for justice, equity, and compassion to which our Unitarian Universalist values and principles perpetually call for our faithful engagement. So I'm wearing a mask and gloves so that I can be well enough to vote in November. And we are wearing them because we cherish not only our own lives, but the lives of others, and because we respect the ways that being an interconnected web make us all vulnerable right now. Earlier this week, I listened to a beautiful 10-minute worship service produced by Reverend Scott Wells for Ascension Day, which is a holiday or a special day on the Christian calendar. I was very moved by the prayer he offered, a prayer that previous generations of Universalists, therefore members of our church, would have heard and known. So I invite you to pray with me and to be likewise ministered unto by these words. O God, inspire our thoughts of a higher life, that we may feel how divine a thing it is to rise above ourselves by outgrowing selfish aims, and how we may be lifted into peace through sharpest suffering, and how the kingdom of heaven comes down to the heart when the affections are set upon things above. O thou guiding spirit of the souls of humankind, whom all worship under many names and diverse forms, we pray for thy blessing upon the great company of those who fain would know thy law and do thy will. Grant unto thy Church Universal, wheresoever it may be found, an increasing knowledge of the truth, a deeper understanding of human need, a more generous spirit of sacrificial love. Where it is weak in the presence of evil, strengthen and uphold it in the hearts of human beings. Where it is in error, reestablish it in the right way. Where it is corrupt, purify it, though it be by fire. Where it is divided by misunderstanding, jealousy, or suspicion, bring it into one spirit of goodwill. Draw together in one accord the spirits of all thy children, until each shall labor in his or her appointed way for thy kingdom of righteousness and love, until the discords of earthly strife and clamor shall be lost in one great hymn of praise. So may thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Amen. It's almost sunset here in the orchard. There's a sweet scent of bluegrass in the air. And as I look at the blossoms on the apple trees, I'm reminded of the symbolism of flowers. Crocuses tell us that the winter is finally over. Roses are a symbol of love. Poppies of remembrance and rest. And sunflowers, a cheery hello. And all of these flowers are used as remembrance of loved ones. And yet, being here in nature, we're reminded of the renewal that cycles, that the old is what nourishes the new, the yet to be, in a never-ending cycle of life. On this Memorial Day, we remember Elizabeth Duff, whose suffering ended on May 15th. She was a beloved member of the Salem, Beverly, and Essex Unitarian Universalist churches. And those who know Liz know that she was a staunch environmentalist, an educator. The Gloucester Times will give you details about her memorial. On a happy note,
We're so very proud of Amanda Shiloh, who has earned her doctorate degree. A lot of hard work and sacrifice to earn that distinction. Well, you know that for me, being out in nature is one of the ways that I fill my cup. And I'm always happy when I see one of you jogging or cycling or gardening or simply waving from the doorstep. See you soon.
These words of benediction are from a surprising source, the Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte. There are only two powers in the world, the power of the sword and the power of the spirit. In the long run, the sword will always be conquered by the spirit. May we believe and go forth as living testaments to the power of the spirit of love. Go in peace, and let the people say, Amen.